we have one more panel. Potentially, we heard it today in one of the questions, one of the great fundamental of his industry, data and data privacy, how to navigate those. And who else to moderate than Anuj Agarwal, the chairman for the Center of Research on Cyber Crime and Cyber Law. Anuj, please come here, and you will invite your own fabulous speakers. But first, if I may introduce myself as well, what a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. You're in capable hands. I'll see you later.
Hi, good afternoon, namaskar. Is there any Josh left? Kuch bacha hai? Thank you. So this is the last panel. You will be free after that. I would request my co-panelists, Rashmi, Sandeep, Ranga, Bharat, and of course Rohit. Please take your respective seats. Privacy. Is it close to your heart? Yes or no? You want it? You don't want it? The fact is, whether you like it or not, it is already a fundamental right. So it is something which has been given to you, part of the Chapter 3, Constitution of India, and declared so by the Honorable Supreme Court in the Puttaswamy judgment. Just one more question to the audience. In the meantime, my panelists are settling down. So this DPDP Act is yet not notified. Is that yes or no? Correct or no? So right now you are not supposed to comply with that. Yes or no? DPDP Act का compliance करना है? Yes or no? But when it is not notified, अभी तो सरकार ने लागू नहीं किया है, तो फिर क्यों करना है? बताइए. You want to listen a lecture? Lecture from the podium? Or do you want to interact? Discuss? Understand? Tell me. So we have 5 lecturers, Anyway, so privacy is different things to different people. For the telecom vendors, telecom partners, it's more about digital data privacy. For individuals, it is more about their personal privacy. What is more important to you as an individual? बताइए, हाथ खड़ा करिए, क्या चाहिए आपको? पर्सनल प्राइवेसी चाहिए या डिजिटल डेटा का प्राइवेसी चाहिए? Okay, very good answer, smart. So do we have legal provisions for both? Yes or no? कितने लोग yes करना चाहते हैं? जरा हाथ खड़ा करें, पता चलेगा कितने लोग जाग रहे हैं या कितने लोग WhatsApp देख रहे हैं. See, I am part of the, Institute of the Cybercrime. I train all the law enforcement. और इसके पहले I was ज्योतिषी, तो पता मुझे सब है. आपकी सारी हिस्ट्री मालूम है, क्या चल रहा है यहाँ, क्या चल रहा है यहाँ, और क्या आपके सोशल मीडिया पर है. तो better be clear. I don't want it to be shown here. I have that facility available. अगर आपने कुछ गलत बोला, यहाँ पर चलने लगेगा वीडियो. So let me ask my first question to my first panelist, and ladies first, of course. DPDP Act. It says you will have to take the consent, because this is an enabling act. It is not to stop anybody doing business. It's basically do it better. So, is it true, and then how?
Actually, yes. It says consent is very important. And whatever information that we are gathering from the fiduciaries or the organizations are gathering from their customers, they need to be first validated whether that information they want to be provided to them. And also, whatever information is being taken from the data principle that actually should be adhering to for the purpose like for which it was being taken. So basically consent manager is a registered entity that takes care of it is a registered entity that helps data principal to give, to manage and withdraw their consent. It needs to be registered by the Data Protection Board. Then it has to be, it should help, it should be interoperable, it should be the consents, it should actually help data fiduciary to take consent or the data principals to give consent, which is unambiguous. It need to be interoperable, like it's, one consent manager can be used by different fiduciaries. So in that sense, it has to be interoperable. And thirdly, it actually it actually helps the data principal to withdraw their consent at any point in time. So basically, and the consent need to be free. It need to be specified, like, for which purpose it has to be taken. And then the consent, once it has been taken, the data principal has the right to withdraw it.
Thank you. Great. So there are only two ways you can use anybody's digital personal data. Please mark the words. It's not about physical data. So if you are getting a form filled, you are free to use it the way you want. DPDP doesn't apply. One is consent, and what is the other way you can use the data? You want to use it or no? So one is consent. So somebody is giving consent, fine. What if somebody is not giving consent? Can you use it still? Anybody, any idea? Why stealing it? You may steal it, but still cannot use it. Now, you are not a government body, I'm talking about the private bodies. Legitimate use. If you can prove that my use is legitimate. So what if somebody is met with an accident, is not willing to give his blood sample, but doctor needs to treat that person? Consent is not. If you are an intermediary where the mandate from RBI says, use the personal data, otherwise how to open the bank account? Use it. Okay. So, Sandeep, everybody is listening that data privacy is important, consent is important. How to do it? I think this is the most important question. I think everybody needs to understand. Spending time here, how to do it. What all needs to be done. Of course, in brief.
See, in today's time, data has become very important. It's not that you can just pick up and use it. So it's not only an economic driver, but a personal information, which is a personal asset. So you have to use it very, very safely, transparently, and there should be some accountability about that. So to do this with the act coming in place and the corporations running around to secure whatever businesses they are doing, they need to really have the data and privacy in place. So there have been a lot of innovative technologies which have come into play, which can be used, which can be deployed to ensure that the data what you are using is safe and is used in a manner where consent is there, but still you need to be very, very cautious. So the trust factor comes very importantly into it. So with various technologies in place, I think you can develop that trust. And in today's time, it's not that you have to put in a firewall or stop the data, but you have to ensure that you are able to use it effectively. You don't need a firewall over there. But as far as DPDP is concerned, the act is yet to come, as you said. But most important part is trust, transparency, and technology. These are three parameters, three T's as I call it, are very important. Few innovative technologies which can play an important role is privacy enhancing technologies which are in play, which are already in use by many of the organizations like differential privacy or homomorphic encryption and federated learning. These are one set of technologies which can be used, enabled, and which can really prevent this misuse which you are in your business. Or rise of zero parity and contextual data, that also has become very important in this context. So it's like mostly in advertising where it is used. Uh, and nowadays we are seeing that users are already by some means giving their consent to use it. There are certain cookies which are maintained by third parties, but you give an acceptance to it. So it is safe, and legally also you're not that much bound. So it's becoming a affair where really there are corporations independently working and controlling this. Similarly, with a lot of AI coming into place, we are still not sure whether AI would become a friend of privacy or a foe of privacy. So that's something which can be dual. AI can prevent it, AI can also enable it. So we have to be very, very cautious in that model. There are different models which are there, and especially under the DPDP Act in India, I think there is a lot of onus on AI systems that will process the personal data of the people, and they need to adhere to the purpose of limitation and storage limitation. So this is very important, that for what purpose and for what storage, and how do we limit it. So this is going to be a very important feature in this. Then Madam already, Rashmi said about the consent part. I think this is already covered as one of the areas. And India has set an example of a lot of applications which are already running, which are actually decentralized identity and self-sovereign data. For example, eKYC has been there, or the DigiLocker and account aggregators in the finance department. So India is already ahead in that space. So we have implemented some areas where the data is secured, which is acceptable to us, and we are running it. So we have not seen many disasters happening out of that, though there are certain incidents which do happen in isolation, but by and large I think we are pretty secured. So while moving forward, I think the most important part is that we need to keep innovating as far as privacy and data protection is concerned. And it's not that we stop the innovation part. It's the product, whatever you are launching, should have the privacy by design. So it's not that you implement it, but within your product, what you're launching, the innovation should be embedded into it. That's very important. So if you do that way, I think you feel more secured while you conduct your business.
Thank you, Sandeep. So, a lot of people think complying with DPDP or any kind of a privacy regulation is a big burden. Without doing an impact assessment, it may be beneficial also, because after all, these big valuations which you are getting is also because of the data. So if you are not protecting your data, your valuation will go down. What is there in the Flipkart and Amazon? They don't own anything. By law also, they are not supposed to own anything. But still their valuations are in jillions, I will say. So I think it's very important, first of all, to understand the impact. What if my data goes? And what if it remains with me? So we need to do something called DPIA, although it may not be necessary for everybody, but I think it's a very, very useful concept. So can I ask Ranga, just to give a little idea what DPIA would be, should be, how to be?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. So just to give a little background about the DPIA part of it, there was in 2000 or 1999, a Canadian scientist, at the time, when the data was very less in terms of the digital data which was generated, personal impact assessment was concerned, identifying how it is, affecting an individual in terms of his data being exposed all across the place. That was in, Europe and Canada mainly, which led to the foundation of GDPR. The extension of the PIA is, the DPIA, which now has become like an important aspect of a DPDP or any further act. The DPIA, the impact assessment primarily says like, how do I, classify, there are 3 steps primarily. How do I map an individual data mapping? Let's take that as a case, one of the important aspects of a DPIA. To say this is personally sensitive information. That is a mapping, that is a primary criteria of DPIA which it considers. And second is in terms of the compliance and the process part of it. The compliance and process part of it predominantly puts the onus on the fiduciaries So the owner of the data or the person who is collecting has to have all the necessary information, as rightly told, the purpose, the legal, the integrity audit, all those have to be laid down clearly to ensure that it is not misused. And the compliance per se in terms of what is as part of the law, whether it is in a cross-border data, whether the data is being misused for any financial irregularities. All these compliances have to be managed. That's the second part of it. The third is in terms of the data management or the data storing purpose. How long you can store a data. For example, I'll tell you one of the real life example what we face as in telecom. In telecom, they say you cannot store the data or SMS or any content. The biggest impact of that is on the technology where customer wants an analysis. We are not storing the data or the content of him, but he wants, then we have to do it on a real time. That increases the computation and data intensive activity and all those things. So it has an impact on that. But here in the DPIA, the center is individuals' privacy, as sir rightly mentioned. Individuals' privacy has been put in and the boundary has been drawn around that. So in the DPIA, three primary things. How do you map the data to be called it as a personally sensitive? How do we ensure that the owners of the data and process compliance are monitored? And how do we maintain and purge the data? These three are the primary aspects of DPIA. Thank you.
Thank you. So are you ready with your questions? Any questions? Oh, panel is going so well. Yeah, tell me. Tell me, what is your question?
Matt from MEF. I guess you had a comment earlier about consent and, whether if you don't give consent, you still, people, can you use the data? And you said that, your comment about it's, you can still use it if you have a justification for using it. I guess the question I have is about aggregate data. Like people, our data is I've been collected by apps and whatever we use online on the phone, and being aggregated. Is there any, rules around that? At all, because even if we do consent or not consent, they can still keep and use our data if they claim it as an aggregate data.
Thank you. Very good question. See, this new law, this has given the power to the individual to own their personal data. Meaning, if an app is asking a certain data which is more than what is required. So, for example, if Ola is asking for your photograph, not required, for just hailing a taxi, a ride, why should they take your photograph? You can say no, and they cannot refuse this service. Right? More or less, people are sharing their data voluntarily, maybe knowing or unknowingly. That, of course, it's their call. But the law provides that you cannot force somebody to part with unnecessary data. Of course, something which is required, suppose the location is required to give you a taxi service, or your name and PAN card number or some kind of identity is required to give you a account or a telephone connection, a mobile connection, that you will have to give, but not beyond that. So that is very much clear. And if you refuse, this service cannot be refused to you. So that is very much there. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is extending data privacy. So in case there is a data leak, is the company or app or wherever the data leak happens, are there any laws requiring them to disclose the data leak and the impact of the data leak, or they can hush it up, they can hush it up? I mean, how does it work?
What kind of an answer you want? Yes or no?
Honest one?
एवरीथिंग इज ऑनेस्ट. अभी आप धर्म को क्या जानते हैं? भगवान ने, कृष्ण ने कहा ना अर्जुन से, अभी आप धर्म को क्या जानते हैं? जो हम कह रहे हैं वो करिए. सो इफ आई लुक एट द ओल्ड लॉ which is existing, DPDP is yet to be notified. Certain guidelines already mandates report any data leakage, any cyber incident within 6 hours. And the current law is very good that if you can prove or if you have a claim on your data leakage, you get 5 crore from the company. How much? 5 crore. So if your data is leaked by any company, you may get compensation up to 5 crore. That law is already there on the Law Book, IT Act, Section 43A. In the new law, of course, the company has to report this whole thing to Data Protection Board, which is yet to be formed, yes, and fine is up to 250 crore. So there is no chance of escape, of course, because data will be huge. Everybody will come to know that data has been leaked. And if you do not disclose, it will come to know to the public through social media, dark web, everything. Fine is up to 250 crore. Anyone? Bharat, you would like to say something? Because this is something very, very important, I think. You pick the thread from there and...
Let me take this to a different perspective.
Okay, great.
Because I think it's a very valid question. But think of the amount of data that is being considered or managed here. Does anybody have a guess how many UPI transactions are being performed every day? Every day in India, 500 million transactions are being performed. And each of these carry your personal data, your bank data, your information. So, if there is a leakage of even a very smallest, it could harm a large number of population. These, and I'm now talking of the digital public infrastructure that the government has created, in terms of the UPI, for example, or DigiLocker, somebody mentioned, or Aadhaar card. You know, there are 1.38 billion Aadhaar cards. And all of those carry very sensitive personal data information that is stored in the government. So I don't think anybody can take chance with the leakage of that kind of data. That kind of amount of data, and I think as rightly mentioned, we have to build privacy and security by design into systems. By design into system. I'm currently working on the standardizing the 6G technology. Now, we all use 4G and 5G technology. All of these mobile technologies, they all carry your data. You're using WhatsApp, you're making banking transactions. All of that data is going on your personal mobile devices. Smartphones, whether low end or high end, all of those carry your personal information data. And that data, when we talk about leakage, can leak at any point of time. This goes through a wireless communication. Almost 20 GB data is sent on this by every single device. 1.4 billion devices multiplied by 20 GB data. How much of that data is passing every day? So what we are doing in the 6G design, and I work with the International Telecommunication Union, where we are trying to develop the framework for the 6G, which will be available in 2030. The idea is the privacy and security has to be inbuilt into the 6G device, into the 6G ecosystem. When we talk of the mobile technology itself, because it just goes over here, anybody can track it on the air and take away all your data. So it doesn't even reach the fiduciary, it doesn't even reach the data manager. So it has to be made sure, and that's what we do in the Government of India and in the International Telecommunication Union, make sure that this is inbuilt into the design of the system. That's where the future is. And the whole idea is that when 6G becomes available in 2030, you have a foolproof system in your hands. Every single person is actually having a device. I think this is a device that lives with you and sleeps with you and goes to the bathing or toilet or wherever. Everybody keeps it all the time. So I think from my perspective, it's most important to protect the data at the source itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they have a question.
Yeah, hi, Upasna here from Telen. So, under data privacy law, is there any regulation or initiative at addressing the issue of extensively long terms and conditions on apps or website, especially when users are unable to proceed without it? Because under that, sometimes we tend to agree or let go of our private data without even realizing it.
Wonderful question. I think this is something which is very much required. And the law definitely provides that the consent document not only has to be in English, has to be in all 22 languages so that everybody understands it. Usually you will find today all those consent and agreements are mostly in English or maybe one or two more languages. So that is one constraint. And the other is that it has to be short and comprehensive. So in the name of taking a consent, if you give a 36-page document, probably a lawyer like me who is from Supreme Court will find it difficult not only in terms of understanding but the time constraint. Because if you want to take a small survey and you are reading a document 36 pages and your flight is about to leave, I mean that's not going to happen. So these provisions are very much there in this current law, DPDP Act. Consent has to be specific, data has to be specific, consent has to be in multiple languages, 22 languages at least, which are there in the Constitution, and it has to be a very comprehensive process. And it is not only the comprehensive process for taking the consent, the similarly comprehensive process for withdrawal of the consent has to be there. So all these are there already. Any other question? Yeah, please.
Every time more and more I talk or try to read this data privacy thing, it is like reading my toughest subject for the exam where I can only learn a little bit every time. It's too complex to digest. Like example, things that just we spoke about, right? Consent for in any application or anything, I wouldn't be able to go through the big clause 1. Second is interpretation of that requires a lawyer sitting next to me to tell me, should I sign it, should I not? So most of the time what we do is, it is like getting into the operation theater just before you get in, doctor asks you to sign. And then most of this case, as you said, you're probably getting into the flight or trying to book something in an urgency and then you download something, you're not going to go through and then take a decision, right? So what it is for me is that this consent is more to protect the company than actually doing a favor to me, because I wouldn't be able to understand, digest, and then take a decision right on that spot. I don't know how this is going to help as a consumer like me. Every time I have to go through the consent pages of the clauses and then say yes.
So maybe.
So you want this consent to be withdrawn?
But again, I need a lawyer. I can probably down the line.
No, I think you are right. You should have a lawyer as your friend who can keep helping you. I think Rohit would like to take this.
So maybe a couple of questions that I heard some gentlemen there asked about, and I'll come to your question as well. Some gentlemen asked about what about companies who take our data, specifically I'm assuming you're talking about PIIs or PHIs. If they take our data, ingest it for their own purpose without getting the consent and then just shrug their shoulders saying that we are using for whatever we want it for and not actually for the purpose that they have given the consent for, right? So in those cases, are there any provisions? Can there be something done? As you rightly mentioned, there is a law, that's max we can do about it, right? but I'm not sure how many of you would know that it is there since 2000 in India, right? In some or the other form. So in 2000 we had IT Act, 2008 we had the revision, further beefing up the provisions of data privacy in there. 2011 we again had the provision of SPDI in there, where sensitive personal data information was to be protected. So we have these laws, acts all in there. Back to your point, whether it is effectively being operated or percolated down to the system so that it can be effectively managed, maintained, and according, penalties and everything can be levied. Now, to make it pragmatic so that the general masses can adhere to the requirement, we have to make it simple. Unfortunately, there is no provision to make it simple beyond a point. You still take insurances, right? As in, health insurance. Do you read tons of terms and conditions written out there? If you are not reading it, there is nothing that we can do about it. We, as in the government, if you see, right? Think of the enormity of data we are talking about. As in, I think. Mr. Bharat also talked about it, and Mr. Sandeep also talked about it. Today it takes maybe, the fastest we can cross the border from here, from India, to any other country. It will, at least I'm assuming, take 2 to 3 hours to cross the border. For data, it's like maybe femtosecond or picosecond that they cross the borders. Now imagine when you have to put a law, regulation, rules, acts against this kind of data transfer, cross-border transfer specifically, how many complex set of laws do you need to go through, right? So that's the complexity of compliance when it comes to data privacy, especially for the organizations, ultra-large organizations. You'll be surprised to know that I think India, while they're catching up, but the first data privacy act any country has kind of come up with globally was somewhere back in 1970s, maybe 1973 if I'm not wrong, back in Sweden. Since then, just imagine that we are now in 2023, 25, we are sitting here still talking about getting the implementation guidelines or maybe the rules and regulations around the DPDP to be implemented. So the compliance is important, the complexity is enormous. Organizations has a lot to do in terms of making it simple, comprehensible, to the general masses, as well as for the organizations to actually make it operational so that they can run, they can meet the bottom line, whether it is the profit margins that they are trying to make or serve the community. So they want to achieve this, still leveraging the data, taking rightful consent from you, making meaningful business out of it, and operating cross borders across the globe. I'm assuming it's comparatively easier when we talk only about India as perspective. While we are looking into the global forum, we are looking into the global platform, the technologies mostly we are talking about have a global impact, then the lens that we need to use about your data, your personal data, the PHIs, the health information, the sensitive information we are talking about, the lens that we have to use for all of them is to also think about when these data points go globally across the border, have you given that consent? Have the organizations thought about the controls they need to put around these data sets when they traverse across? So I think there are many facets to it. I can go on and on, but I know you have limited time, Manoj, so over to you.
Yes, any other question?
Sir, I have a point to add on that. While I know there is a legal limitation, or from the legal perspective, if you probably Google it and check it out, how agentic AI and LLM, one paper has been proposed and presented. What it does say is that 250 crore you mentioned, you can search in Google. Every time, they say that, API or, the solution can be embedded that before you click or, you want to sign, you can ask for the recommendation of that which is inbuilt, whether I should sign. Because there what you need to give is your input as a goal. That means I need this as an insurance from me as a protectee, whatever the information you give, and ask this is the output. Should I sign it or not? Then it will give you a recommendation in terms of saying safe to sign or safe to, not to sign. So this is the technology part of it, which, a paper has come. I think, we should probably implement it and, market it. That's the way on the non-legal side of it. Whereas the legal side of it is being taken care by the DPDP Act and all those things. but there is definitely a recommendation engine which can be implemented using agentic and LLMs.
Yes.
I mean, fascinating. It's, we can cancel high tea and just keep going on with this. So is there any difference in regulation, or should there be any difference in regulation between the consent that I give for all of my data to be used by whatever app wants to use it in whatever way they want, and a restriction on them to be able to ask for absolutely everything, even though some of it may not be necessary?
The law itself has provided that the consent has to be taken for the purpose explicitly. So there is no more any general consent available to be taken. You just can't say, okay, give consent for anything and everything. That's invalid. Void ab initio. From the beginning itself, this kind of a consent, if any company takes, that's good for nothing. It's no consent. So the consent has to be specific. It has to be comprehensive. The person must have understood. So it can't be carte blanche. No. Law does not allow that.
But,
if somebody is doing it, it's invalid. Yes?
But Anuj, what is happening is you have a DPDP bill in place. You have TCCP guidelines in place which talk about consent and data privacy. But none of them is implemented in a way wherein the PI data is protected. You talk about DPDP, it is like, it's more than a year, it has become a bill, but it has not been implemented as yet. You talk about TRAI's, TCCP guidelines. They have consent management, it talks about the consent management, but in real sense, if you talk about it, it is not being implemented. So what's the point of, having so many bills, a law being done, which is not implemented in real sense? So any which ways, our data is vulnerable, to a large extent.
Very good last point, Rashmi, you raised. And I think I would like to quickly reply to that. Whether DPDP Act is there or not, whether IT Act is there or not, whether IPC or BNS is not there, the Constitution has given privacy as a fundamental right. So any of you feel that your data privacy has been violated, it is being used without your consent, and despite your request, it is not being deleted from the site. So you have got married and you are still listed on the shadi.com as a bachelor, and they are not deleting because they find you as a very good candidate still. You have got a right to move to the Constitutional Court, go to Delhi High Court, file a writ. Next day, you will be heard, and third day, your data will be free. It will no more be there. So all these laws are already implemented because we have got a right called fundamental right as privacy. So it is very much there. Honorable Supreme Court has asked the government that what if everybody comes to us as a writ? So please create a law. So this law is a corollary to what we have got already. And writ is available to everyone for free. Please move to your constitutional courts. It's not there. You can't. And 2 or 4 people doing it, rest will follow. The companies will follow. So it's not, there is no more anything to be done from the user perspective. Yes, for the companies, they will always try to figure out ways and means. So I think, thank you very much. I think we are, time is up. If allowed, I can take one more question. I don't know. Up to the organizers. Our panel is always willing to help you out. Yeah, quickly, please.
With the new IT law 2020, is the Telegraph Act and the Press Trust Act has been abolished in terms of the data privacy, or it exists with those laws?
It exists, and this is basically on top of it, and only talks about digital data privacy in general, which includes telecom and everything else. Thank you very much. It was pleasure talking to you. Thank you, panelists. Thank you very much.